local forecast. This is WeatherScope.
The storms that have been plaguing the eastern half of the country are finally moving offshore tonight. Good evening, everyone. I'm Warren Madden. We've got good news for much of the country for Sunday, but first, let's go to the Forecast Center and Sharon Resultan for the latest on the severe weather in the Northeast. Sharon?
That's right, Warren. We're still dealing with some severe thunderstorms, or at least the potential for severe weather in the Northeast. There are no thunderstorm warnings in effect at this time, but a severe thunderstorm watch remains in effect for a good chunk of eastern Pennsylvania, and we'll show that to you in just a moment. I wanted to start you out first with some scenes earlier on, taking you down into the south. Out of Georgia, a 9-year-old girl is dead in the North Georgia town of Chickamauga. A tornado destroyed the mobile home she was in around 10 o'clock last night. Her little brother was injured, and several other homes were heavily damaged in the storm. Fortunately, the severe weather is over tonight in the south and east. And North Carolina got its share of rain and thunderstorms also. At times this morning, the rain was falling at a rate of more than an inch an hour. For the most part, the Carolinas were spared the worst of the severe weather. And of course, tomorrow looks very nice for the Tar Heel State. We had some nasty conditions across the deep south last night, if you recall. Let's go ahead and take a peek at some of the severe reports that we've actually plotted here for you since Friday, and this will also take you on through Saturday. Notice last night all of the tornadoes. These are all confirmed tornadoes from Louisiana stretching on up into northwestern Georgia. This morning, or earlier today, I should say, heading down into Florida, we had a confirmed tornado. That was around Glade County, Florida, and a couple of injuries reported with that. 5 homes reported moderate damage as a result of all the wind there. Wind damage reported up and down the eastern seaboard, all those blue dots either indicating where the hail was 3/4 inch or larger, or where we had extremely strong winds, or in fact damaging winds. And you can see even into eastern Ohio, on into Pennsylvania, numerous reports of trees down, some of those trees taking power lines down with them, and even heading on into Franklin County, heading on into Pennsylvania. One person is dead when a tree was felled by the strong winds, I should say. There's a look at the Northeast now, and you'll see the line of storms advancing in on New York City. This is just about the time we thought that they would be moving on through the Big Apple. We don't have any severe reports at this time, but we will continue to keep you abreast of the very latest. If we were to see any severe weather, it would be ahead of the cold front. A lot of the activity behind it, mainly just some showers, and a lot of that appears to be dissipating. And since the sun has gotten lower in the sky, we've seen a lot of our severe activity ahead of the front. really kind of losing its punch as well. Let's show you what's left of our weather watch, our severe thunderstorm watch, only in effect for extreme southeastern Pennsylvania, and you can see a little chunk there of New Jersey, just a sliver of New York State. Watching around New York City, again, these look like they're falling apart as they approach the city. As we work our way on into Philly, we still have some moderate rain to contend with. Thunderstorms have pushed through Albany. Just a little more rain for you for the next hour or so, and then it looks like the worst will be over for you as well. So things really winding down now as we head on into the Northeast. There again is a closer inspection. There are a couple of cells here that look a little bit more menacing, but again, no severe reports with them at this time. Just expect some gusty winds and some small hail with these thunderstorms as they rumble on through. Our cold front extends all the way back down to the Gulf Coast. We do have a few scattered showers and thunderstorms still ahead of the front here, most of which has passed off the coast, looking at a little more development as we head into western portions of North Carolina. But again, nothing severe being reported. It really looks like our severe activity is winding down. And even our lone cell around the Fort Lauderdale area is looking like it's winding down as well as it continues to push toward the coast. So things looking a little bit better here, folks, as we work our way across the eastern seaboard. A lot of this a function of the fact that the sun has set or is setting, and we're losing that daytime heating. There's a look at all the rainfall that has come down, and many of these areas in the southeast have seen a good 2 and 3 inches of rain. Fortunately, that moisture has tapered off across the Carolinas, and indeed you can look forward to a better day for your Sunday. So the second half of the weekend looking a little bit better across the eastern seaboard. Warren's going to tell you a little bit more about Sunday's forecast as well as the rest of the nation's weather. Warren?
Thanks, Sharon. Well, much of the west nice today compared to the eastern half of the country. It also looks like things will remain pretty quiet for the rest of the weekend and even on into next week. Let's take a look at what's going on out there. We look at our current map, and what we've got is that storm still sitting and still causing problems across the eastern U.S. But notice the central U.S. Not much happening. It's high pressure over the southwestern area of Oklahoma, keeping things quiet from the Canadian border to the Texas coast. Still some showers in the northwest, though. Current temperatures warm in the Rocky Mountain states and the southwest with some 80s and 90s popping up, but our cool air is situated right behind the storm with a little area 40s here into Ohio, eastern Indiana, and northern Kentucky. Put some numbers on it for you right now. You can see Cincinnati at 47 right now, Pittsburgh at 50, 48 in Chicago and Detroit. But you come down to St. Louis, you're at 59, 70 in Little Rock. We're at 72 here in Grand Junction, Colorado, 91 in Las Vegas, and 95 in Phoenix at the present time. Our radar, well, Sharon's been filling you in on everything that's been happening with the storm here along the East Coast, although you can notice that behind it we're getting some moisture still coming down off the Great Lakes, and you can see that right here, a line of showers over Lake Michigan, eastern.
In this half hour, WeatherScope, a comprehensive national forecast. At 40 after, TravelWise gives you the latest on travel hotspots. Next, international weather. And at 50 after, the storm update. Right now, your local forecast. WeatherScope.
The storms that have been plaguing the eastern half of the country are finally moving offshore tonight. Good evening, I'm Christine Abernathy. Thanks for joining us. We've got good news for much of the country for Sunday, but first let's go to the Forecast Center and Sharon Resulton for the latest on the severe weather in the Northeast. Thanks, Christina. Not a lot to report as far as severe thunderstorms at this point in time, but still a lot of storms moving through the Northeast, and we are keeping a very close eye on those. Let's start you out first showing you some of the damage as a result of the same storm, but numerous thunderstorms moving through the south producing scenes like this. And in fact, a 9-year-old girl is dead in North Georgetown of Chickamauga. A tornado destroyed the mobile home she was in around 10 o'clock last night. Her little brother was injured and several other homes were heavily damaged in the storm. Fortunately, severe weather is over tonight across the southeast. And into North Carolina, folks here saw more than their fair share of rain and thunderstorms. At times this morning, rain was falling at a rate of more than an inch an hour. For the most part, the Carolinas were spared the worst of the severe weather, and tomorrow looks a lot nicer for the Tar Heel State. We'll get into the forecast details in just a little bit. Let's start you out first looking at some of those severe reports since Friday. And if you were watching last evening, you know that it was very, very active across much of the deep south. Numerous confirmed tornadoes. That's what all of those red triangles indicate. And then earlier today, we also had a report of a tornado here heading down into Florida, across South Florida in Glade County. That's the east and northeast of Fort Myers. A couple of injuries with that, a couple of major injuries, I should say. 5 homes reporting moderate damage, and then several minor injuries reported with that particular twister. As we go up the coast, we'll find lots of blue dots indicating where we saw some large hail, but most of those blue dots actually indicating where we had some wind problems. So wind damage was very much a factor with these thunderstorms as they rolled across the east coast and even on through eastern portions of Ohio and on into Pennsylvania. Now we headed to the northeast. That's where we still find our line of thunderstorms. All of that ahead of the cold front, which continues to march off to the east. Activity behind it, cooler air here, so generally looking at a rain pattern, a few scattered showers. The thunderstorms, again, are ahead of our cold front, and they're almost into the New York City area. There you get a better inspection of our front and the fact that the thunderstorms are riding well ahead of it, pulling away from the Philly area, moving now on into New York City, and we continue to see that active weather moving on in through southern portions of New England. New Jersey going to get hit with some possible hail, certainly some strong winds, and you're going to find some nasty conditions on into New York City as these storms pull on through. But again, no severe thunderstorm warnings at this time. You're looking at the sliver of the watch area that remains in effect. As long as we have these storms, we've got to keep telling you about what's going on around the Baltimore area and on up into Philly. As a matter of fact, it's this little cluster right here that has prompted a marine warning, a special marine warning for you mariners from Spasushi Island to Bodkin Point. As those thunderstorms roll on through, expect some high waves, some very gusty winds, and some heavy downpours, not to mention frequent lightning as those roll off to the northeast at about 40 miles per hour. Again, some of those thunderstorms pushing east of Philly. This next batch might catch the southern suburbs of Philadelphia. New York City, some thunderstorms bearing down on you, but best chance for any severe weather would probably be in the western suburbs as we continue to see southerly winds coming up into most of New York City off the ocean there, and certainly that's a factor for Long Island. The ocean water temperature is quite cool, and so the air will probably be somewhat more stable. If you're watching that loop, you saw that the thunderstorms appear to almost be falling apart in some spots. That's most likely due to the fact that we've lost our daytime heating, but still just north and west of New York proper, we do find a few stronger thunderstorms, and we'll continue to watch that. Heading southward, most of the storms here have pushed off coast. There are a few areas with some thunderstorms redeveloping north of the Charlotte area, and things looking much, much better as we head back down into Florida. But a lot of rain, folks, as we showed you on into the Carolinas. Fortunately, the heavier rains have pushed away from the Tar Heel State, and we are looking at some improvements in your weather across much of the East Coast heading on into Sunday. Christina standing by to give you the very latest on your weekend weather for Sunday and the rest of the nation's weather. Thanks a lot, Sharon. The west was nice today compared to the eastern half of the country, and it also looks like things will remain pretty quiet for the rest of the weekend and on into next week. Let's see what's going on out there right now, and here we go. Of course, Sharon tells you about what's going on in the eastern U.S. We also have a little bit of wet weather to talk about in the northwest. A little bit of rain, even the potential for a bit of snow. Also here we see some rain and even some storms moving through portions of Illinois and on into Indiana. And as a matter of fact, south of Chicago, we had reports of a pea-sized hail in Park Forest there. So again, things a little bit on the rough side for you too, and you can see that scattered wet weather back through southern Illinois, moving on into Indiana. The western half of the country, pretty quiet all in all, especially through the Plain States and on into California, for instance. Most of the state fairly quiet, except to the north, where a front is moving on in, and with that we've got a little bit of wet weather and some rain through western Washington and Oregon, and even into
Time to lose a couple of inches? This is exactly what you need. It's not hard to do. It's easy to keep
The
up
Home
with.
Shopping Network. We have what you want.
What took you so long?
I got nailed.
How bad?
55 and a 35 miles on
This is the absolute latest technology in radar detection.
The Home Shopping Network. We have what you want.
Know what Comcast customers can get besides great cable TV? Sprint long distance, and a deal that'll blow you away. Up to 30 minutes of free long distance calling every month for a year when you order Sprint from Comcast. Not to mention Sprint Sense with dime-a-minute rates. So call Comcast and start talking up a storm. Comcast, everything you connect with.
This is your local forecast. Weather information you can plan on, only on the Weather Channel. Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
Well, it is time now for our spring weather update, and there's definitely been some stormy spring weather to tell you about in the eastern half of the country in particular. Let's see where it is right now, and what we've got is plenty of rain and storms still occurring here in the northeastern U.S. Even the threat for severe weather continues, although no warnings out right now. You could still run into some rather rough weather. We'll take a closer look at that coming up. We've even had some rough weather back towards the Chicago area, just south of town. Reports of pea-sized hail covering the ground about an hour or so ago. So some of these storms packing a bit of a punch. In the northwestern U.S., you are getting a little bit of rain too, and even some snow for the higher elevations, but it's in the northeast, along the coastal areas here in particular, and really from southern New England back to eastern Virginia. The chance still there for strong storms. And this is the area we are looking at for plenty of wet weather. As a matter of fact, flood watch is a possibility in the areas in darker green through northern New York and even portions of northern New England. So look out, flooding a possibility there. Don't drive your car through any areas where water covers the roads. Certainly rainy, soggy conditions here. Also, not only flood watch is in effect, also a severe thunderstorm watch in effect from extreme southern New York on into New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania. So what you want to be on the lookout for: strong winds, perhaps strong damaging winds, hail, and heavy amounts of rain. Although we don't have any warnings in effect right now, still the chance that there could certainly be some rough weather. So that in effect until 10 o'clock local time. Look out. It's not over yet, but it looks like things will be improving as we head into the next couple of days. Right now, the Northeast not the only area where you could run into some wet weather. Also in the Northwest, Seattle, Portland, Spokane, soggy conditions for you as yet another system moves on in. But the storminess, giving us some indication here as we take a look at our lightning data. Each little red dot indicating a lightning strike, and then the white dots, the more recent strikes, and you can see those here, Florida and then out over the open waters. But still some storminess here, moving through New York and New Jersey, and even into Indiana. A few lightning strikes reported here as well. So again, you'll want to look out because we're still getting a bit of storminess, and you can see it here, the yellows and the reds on our radar picture indicating where some of the worst of it is right now. You can see that line of rain with embedded storms here, and around Philadelphia, getting socked right now back towards Baltimore, and then northward to New York and Hartford. Those are some areas that are going to be under the gun now for a little while longer as these storms move on through. And you can see a closer view. Look out Wilmington, look out around Philadelphia and Trenton, New York, around White Plains, seeing some of the storminess moving here as well, and on into, again, southern New England. You could still get some rough weather, maybe around Hartford, let's say. Back to the west we go, still getting some soggy conditions here too, around Pittsburgh, sort of scattered rain. So again, some soggy weather continuing. And it looks like in the northeastern U.S., as that system responsible for all this messy weather moves offshore, we'll still see some showery conditions at least on into tomorrow, but things should be improving after that. Southward, most of the storminess has moved off the southeastern coast. Still getting a little bit of storminess here through North Carolina. Much of it, though, again, has moved offshore. And you can see in Florida, still some storms here around Daytona Beach and northeastward over the open water. So we certainly had some rough weather earlier in Florida and throughout the southeastern U.S., but things have begun to quiet down, at least for most areas. Let's see what's in store for the forecast, and we'll head into the northeast first of all, where New York, your low 53 degrees, 62 for a high. And again, you're going to have some showery conditions and some rather windy conditions, not only for New York, but for Caribou and as far south as Norfolk, too. Atlanta down to 49. Look for a high on Sunday. 69. Plenty of sunshine. A good day for Music Midtown in Atlanta. So looks like a good way to end the weekend for folks there. In Chicago, 39. Your high temperature 64. Plenty of sunshine here as well from St. Louis to Des Moines to Minneapolis to Chicago. Looking good. And here we go into the west. LA, a high of 82 degrees. Stay tuned. Weather Scope is next.